All right, guys. Good afternoon. We are going to go ahead and dive into our next lesson here. So we're going to be talking about Ronald Reagan again today, the president, 40th president of the United States. Last time we talked about his domestic policies, and today we're going to talk about his foreign policies. So those policies that are used to interact with other countries around the world. But before we get started, do want to point out just a couple of things. I know you guys have heard this already, but we have more and more people joining, and I know people still have questions, and so I'm going to quickly touch on these, and then we'll go ahead and start. We'll go ahead and start the lecture. So if you want to skip ahead, if you already know this information, you're more than welcome to do that to get to the lecture. So first and foremost, we're using Google Classroom, so the link's right here, classroom.google.com. Each period has its own classroom code. So whatever classroom you were in, just make sure you snag this code in order to join the classroom. I'll be posting all of our assignments there and any important discussion points that need to be blasted out to everybody. Google Meet is what we're using in order to facilitate online lectures. Guys, I expect everybody to be there. I will be taking attendance that's submitted to the school, so it's really important that you guys are showing up to those. So that happens Monday and Wednesdays from 11:15 until 12:30 p.m. Honestly, I'm not using the entire time to lecture. I'm really trying to condense it to about 30 to 45 minutes of lecture, and then you guys will have the remainder of that time to ask me any questions, try to get clarification on any topics that I might have gone through too quickly, and it's really your time. It's your time to ask any unanswered questions that you might have for me. Attendance is going to be posted on each Google Doc. So what you need to do is you need to make sure you click on that link and you submit your attendance to our lecture. Okay. Um, if you need to contact me, you can do that through Google Classroom. Let me put Edmodo here. You can contact me through Google Classroom, my email, or you can you can find me on Edmodo, okay? If you guys need that code, email me. I don't have it posted right now, but I can get you that code, okay? Google Hangout is another way to get in contact with me. Really, all you need in order for Google Hangout to work is you just need to plug in my email address here, and then you can send me a direct message. It's instant messaging. It's really easy to respond to those, and I can do them pretty quickly. Assignments. So you've got 2 days to complete assignments after they've been posted on um, Google Classroom. I'm uploading these lectures, so if you need to review the content or you need to just a quick refresh, you can find that through YouTube. Okay. Um, let's see. Late work, guys. It's 15 points per day, so you've got 2 days to complete this. I'm giving you plenty of time to complete these documents, and you've got plenty of time to ask me any questions if you're struggling with a certain portion of the work. So with that said, so here is the attendance link that I was talking about. So it'll be posted up here. Guys, if you're reporting attendance for my class on Wednesday, for example, um, obviously I'm not doing live lectures on that day. So the school knows it's logged whenever you send those over. It's got a timestamp and a date on it. So even if you try to submit a attendance for Tuesday and it's Wednesday at 12:30, guys, we can see when you submit these attendance. So make sure you're submitting that whenever you go into our lecture, okay? Grades. So I've caught up on most grades. I think there's two classes that I have just one or two assignments more from actual classroom lecture that I'm uploading. And then after that, I'm working on all of the Google Classroom work that we've been doing, okay? So I'm almost caught up with grades. If you have any questions about specific scores or you need an overall grade, let me know, but I think most of those have been posted by now. So we're going to move on to Ronald Reagan. This is the do now, so if you want, you can go ahead and pause it here, answer those do now questions. The first one says, what was Reaganomics and was it successful? Remember, we talked about Reaganomics. Reaganomics is basically a economic policy that's put in place by President Reagan. It's tax cuts, and what it ends up doing is it ends up helping a specific group of people. and it really doesn't benefit another group. So the question is, was it successful? Who is it successful for, and who's it not successful for? Number two, I put number one twice. Number two, what was the Equal Rights Amendment, and was it successful? So when we think of Equal Rights Amendment, we're thinking of Equal Rights Amendment for which group of people? There are two political activists that one opposes and one supports the Equal Rights Amendment. One of them is Phyllis Schlafly, sorry, and Betsy Friedan. And both of them, Betsy Friedan actually supports the Equal Rights Amendment, and Phyllis Schlafly does not support it. So both of them are ladies and political activists during this time. So we're asking, what was the Equal Rights Amendment, and was it successful? Does it pass? Number three, you should always help those who are weaker than you. Why or why not? Think about that. Are we always 100% strong 100% of the time? Do you ever need help from anybody else? What about other people? Do they ever need help from you? So what do you think? Should we always help those who are weaker than you? Why or why not? Okay. So today's learning objective, we're going to describe and evaluate through sequencing Donald Reagan's, good Lord, Ronald Reagan's foreign policies. So there he is, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Ronald Reagan. He's a two-term president. He serves from 1981 to 1989, and we are diving into his foreign policy. So if we think about Reagan, before the break, we talked about Reagan's foreign policy. We discussed how his policy was different from Jimmy Carter's, the president before him. Jimmy Carter, remember, he went to China. He signed the SALT treaty with the Soviets. He was trying to improve relations, and then bam, President Reagan shows up. He says, get that stuff out of here, swats Jimmy Carter's progress, and he starts a foreign policy known as peace through strength. So remember, he basically told the world that there was a space program that could shoot lasers at nukes and missiles if they ever decided to try to attack the United States. Of course, this wasn't true. There was no program like that. But the idea is that Ronald Reagan wants peace through strength. So if we show so much strength and so much military might, the Soviets are going to back down, right? And that's kind of Reagan's policy, and that's how he thinks we can beat the Soviets. Another one of his foreign policies was seeing the Berlin Wall fall. So he wanted to see West and East Berlin united, and he wanted to see that wall that the communists put up. He wants it torn down, and it eventually does come down. So, okay, we are going to take our focus away from Europe for a moment, and we're actually going to move to another neck of the woods, the Middle East. I know if you open up news headlines, you see things like Iran working on a nuclear program. You see ISIS in the Middle East. It's all negative sort of things, right? There's a lot of cool things. The Middle East has thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years of history, rich history, the cradle of civilization. So actually, some of the earliest recorded civilizations come from the Middle East, and so it's a land rich with history and rich with culture. Today, we're going to discuss the Middle East. We're specifically going to discuss Lebanon. So Lebanon is a small country located right above Israel and right next to Syria. And the U.S. actually gets involved in Lebanon, and we'll kind of dive a little bit more into this. So, from 1975 until about 1990, Lebanon goes through a period of civil war. Excuse me. And basically, what happens is the Lebanese president asks the United States to get involved and to help stop the civil war. The civil war is bloody, it's violent, a lot of destruction, a lot of lives are lost. There are cities that are destroyed, families lose family members in the fighting. There's a lot of violence between Christians and Muslims at this time. And so the country is torn apart. And so the president of Lebanon asked the United States to come and try to help stop the civil war. Ronald Reagan agrees to this. We send, I believe it's about 800 troops, almost 1,000. And unfortunately, in May of 1983, U.S. troops were stationed in Beirut, the capital. Um, it happened in the early hours of the morning. There was a truck filled with bombs that broke through the main gate of the U.S. compound, ran into the barracks where the soldiers were sleeping, and about 230-ish soldiers, U.S. soldiers, Marines, sailors, Army personnel end up dying. And so the United States is shocked, and eventually we withdraw from Lebanon. Um, this is going to help you answer one of your questions. So listen, the reason this is so significant is because this is the first attack that American soldiers receive, the first terrorist attack that U.S. soldiers receive on foreign soil. Okay? So this is the first act of terrorism that U.S. troops receive on foreign soil. Okay, so if you look at the section, the first section in your notes, it says Marines in Lebanon. So this is the first section. I'm going to quickly read this paragraph. It says in 1982, President Reagan sent U.S. Marines at the request of the president of Lebanon to suppress a civil war between Christians and Palestinian refugees. Right? The American forces remained in Lebanon until 241 U.S. Marines were killed by a suicide bomber in 1983. So what I want you to do is I want you to pause the video right here, and I want you to quickly watch the video in Google Classrooms called, I believe it's called Marines in Lebanon. I think that's it. So I'm going to give you just a moment to do that. Go ahead and pause the video, watch that, and then we'll resume. Okay, so now that you've finished watching the video, the questions under there are why were Marines in Lebanon? Why were the Marines in Lebanon? That is in the reading right there. So you can answer that just off the reading. What happened to the Marines? So what happened to the Marines once they were there? Again, refer to your reading. And then I remember I said hint, hint. I told you about a minute and a half ago in this lecture, there was a huge significance, right, to this bombing. What is the significance? So we're going to move on. We're going to push towards the Iran-Contra affair. The Iran-Contra affair. So let's read this together. Under that second section, it says Reagan secretly sold arms, weapons to Iran in exchange for the release of American hostages in Lebanon. The money was used to fund anti-communist Contra rebels in Nicaragua. This was done even though Congress had specifically prohibited any U.S. aid to the Contras. The Iran-Contra affair angered Americans because the Reagan administration had denounced Iran as a supporter of global terrorism. This caused more Americans to question the government. So I'm sure your heads are spinning right now. So let's shift focus here, okay? So we just talked about Lebanon, right? There was a civil war in Lebanon. The United States was asked to come in. We came in, and however our troops were attacked, right? There was a bombing that happened on the U.S. military base. So we end up leaving Lebanon. So we're going to quickly move our focus to Iran, this country right here, this big country in the Middle East. So the interesting thing about Iran is it's a little bit different from most of its neighbors, right? A lot of Iranians speak something called Farsi, which is a different language from Arabic that's spoken in most of the Middle East. Iran is also a Shiite majority country. There's two main branches of Islam. One is Shiite, which basically states that followers of Islam or leaders of the Islamic faith must be descendants from the Prophet Muhammad. The rest of the Middle East, not the rest, but the majority of the Middle East practices Sunni Islam, except for a couple of pockets throughout the Middle East. So Iran is mostly Shiite, and the rest of the Middle East is mostly Sunni, right? So once the U.S. leaves Lebanon, we're going to shift our focus to Iran now. The interesting thing about Iran is Iran actually had a dictatorship. Before 1979, there was a monarchy that reigned in Iran. The last Iranian monarch, his name was Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, and he was the leader of the Iranian state. However, under his rule, there wasn't a lot of freedom. People couldn't speak their minds. Many people were frustrated at the fact that the king made a lot of money. He grew wealthy, but many people in Iran didn't see the sort of wealth and benefits that the Iranian monarch was gaining. So the interesting thing is that the United States also backed the Iranian government and the dictator and the king of Iran. All of this worked until 1979, when a religious leader named the Ayatollah Khomeini came to power. He tapped into the people's frustrations. He promised to do away with the corrupt system that the Shah had, and basically he started a revolution in Iran and eventually took over the country. After he takes over the country, the United States deems that Iran is a terrorist state, that they fund terrorism around the world. And so we no longer have a good relationship with Iran. So before 1979, when there was a king, the United States had a good relationship with Iran. After the Iranian Revolution, when Khomeini takes over, we are now no longer friends with Iran. Iranian leaders don't like the United States, and we don't like Iran, right? So we're going to go back just a moment. We talked about the military-industrial complex. I know we've hit this topic a few times, but just remember the industrial military complex is a network of government and private companies that build weapons during peacetime. Okay? This happens right after World War II. President Dwight D. Eisenhower is the first person to coin this term. And guys, this still happens today. We are one of the largest arms producers in the world. We produce more weapons and sell more weapons to, I think, than any other country in the world. I think Israel also sells quite a few, but the United States, I think, is the biggest seller of arms. So what ends up happening is, even though the United States and Iran are enemies, there is a arms deal that happens between Iran and the United States. It is called the Iran-Contra arms deal, right? So let's look back to your second section here, okay? So the Iran-Contra affair. I'm going to quickly and very briefly go over what this affair is, all right? I'm going to try to simplify it as best I can. So, the United States there are hostages that are being held in Lebanon, okay? And so in order for the United States to get its citizens back, we sell weapons to Iran, okay? So we sell weapons to Iran to get American hostages back. And Iran gives us our hostages back. The issue is that we have declared Iran to be a terrorist country. So what ends up happening is, because we sell the weapons to Iran, we make money off of this sale, and then we take this money and give it to a Contra group, a group of rebels in Nicaragua. Okay, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to say this again. The United States sells weapons to Iran. We make money from the sale, and then we give that money to a rebel group in Nicaragua. Now, you might be asking, what in the world, Mr. Feltz? Why would we give money to a rebel group in Nicaragua? Well, President Reagan hates communists. He's doing whatever he can to end communism. And so what he ends up doing is he ends up giving money to these rebel groups because they are anti-communists, okay? They are anti-communist. And so these groups are known as Contra, and that's where that term comes from. Iran-Contra affair, right? Because we give weapons to Iran, Iran gives us money, and then we give that money to rebel groups in Nicaragua, okay? Anti-communist groups in Nicaragua. So basically what happens is this turns into a huge scandal. This was supposed to be a secret deal. The Iran-Contra affair was supposed to be a secret deal between the Iranians, the Americans, and the Contra rebels in Nicaragua, the anti-communist rebels in Nicaragua. However, word gets out, and it turns into a major scandal. There is a lieutenant colonel by the name of Oliver North. He helped lead this entire operation. And basically, the Reagan administration, President Reagan says, "Oh, I had no idea that this was going on. I had no idea that the United States was selling weapons to Iran. I also had no idea that we were giving the money that we earned to rebel groups in Nicaragua." And it turns into a scandal, right? Um, Basically, Reagan at first denies it, and then he slowly gives more information that some people within his administration probably knew. So what I want you to do is I want you to watch the next video. I believe it's going to be Reagan Iran Contra video. Make sure you watch that. I'm going to give you a few minutes to do so. Go ahead and pause this video, and then we'll start with the next questions. Okay, so now that you've watched the video, let's look at some of these questions, okay? So number one says, according to the clip, how did the Iran-Contra affair impact Reagan's presidency? So basically, before we give money to these anti-communist rebels in Nicaragua, Reagan actually asks Congress if they can send money, and Congress says no. So the Reagan administration does this anyways, even though we have not gotten permission from the Congress. So, according to the clip, how did the Iran-Contra affair impact Reagan's presidency? So, if you need reference, look at the paragraph, okay, and it'll tell you kind of what happens to the American opinion of the government during this time. Number two, why would Reagan want to help the Contra rebels in Nicaragua? Okay, we said the Contra rebels are what? Are they communist or anti-communist? And we said that Reagan really hates communists, right? So think about that for a moment, get your answer, formulate it. And then number three, do you believe Reagan was involved in this affair? Do you think that Reagan knew that we were selling weapons to Iran and then using that money to buy weapons and give support to anti-communist rebels in Nicaragua? What do you think? Do you think the president knew? Okay, so at this point, it's independent practice, guys. I'm gonna read both of these paragraphs. I'm sorry, both of these boxes here, and I'm gonna read the questions, and then you guys can answer them. If you need any help, then you feel free to email me or message me, and I don't mind helping where I can. Okay, so Reagan's quote says, "Perhaps we didn't appreciate fully enough the depth of hatred and complexity of the problems that made the Middle East such a jungle. Perhaps the idea of a suicide bomber committing mass murder to gain instant entry to paradise was so foreign to our own values and consciousness that it did not create in us the concern for the Marines' safety that it should have." And this was, again, a quote from President Ronald Reagan. Number one says, why did the Marines leave Lebanon? Why did they leave Lebanon? If you need help, if you need a reference, go back to that first section and read that paragraph again. What is the topic of this excerpt? What event is he talking about? Again, go back to that. Go back to those readings if you need reference point. What is Reagan's main argument in this excerpt? What is he saying? Okay. The next box says, do you think the U.S. got involved in the Middle East to promote peace or protect its oil interest in the region? So remember, we talked about this during Carter, OPEC. OPEC was the oil... Oh, gosh. What is wrong with me? I'm blanking, guys. Hold on. OPEC is the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. There we go. Brain fart there for a moment. So OPEC is basically, it's a collection of countries that produce and export oil around the world. And remember, we said the Middle East has lots of oil. So what do you think? The U.S. was truly invested in promoting peace, or do you think it was protecting its oil interest? And then the right to learn. We should invade other countries to make oil cheaper for Americans. What do you think? Why or why not? Make sure you give me those 3 to 5 sentences. So that is it, guys. I know I went through this really, really quickly, so don't be afraid to pause, rewatch sections of this. If you need further help, you can email me through my. I'm gonna put this up again. My information's right here. So if you need me, you can email me dfelts@dallasisd.org. You can catch me on Edmodo. You can message me through Google Classroom, or probably the easiest and fastest way is to send me a message on Google Hangout. Right? It'll shoot me a message directly. It's like kind of like instant messenger. All right, guys. Well, have a fantastic week. Appreciate you guys that jumped into the lesson this morning. I hope that you guys are staying safe and healthy. Make sure you're washing your hands constantly. Don't be touching your face. And if you need anything, just give me a shout. All right. Bye, guys. Have a good one.